Recently on the news, flood maps. The federal government has released new flood maps, and it may impact your home. You may now have to get flood insurance. I'm with Attorney at Law, Fred Xlander, and that's our topic today. Fred, thanks for being on the show today.
Happy to be here, John.
Now, these flood maps by FEMA, is that who releases it?
FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. Now, how does that impact the typical homeowner?
Earlier this year, in fact, just after the first of the year, these two organizations, FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers, released new flood maps in our area. As you recall, almost exactly 4 years ago was the big flood of 2006 here.
Yeah.
And over the past 4 years, these organizations have been working on redrawing the maps. The consequence of that has been that about 10% more properties have been added in our area to the flood zones.
Hundreds of properties.
Hundreds of properties, yes. So the problem now is that if you didn't think you were in a flood zone, and now you are, as of just a few months ago when these maps were redrawn, it could be a little bit harder to sell the house because the buyers are now going to have to get flood insurance because the banks are looking at these maps now. The interesting thing is they're not technically effective until this fall, but the banks are looking at them now and requiring buyers to get flood insurance for these properties. So it would behoove your listeners thinking about selling their home to get on a website that we can put up. It's very easy to negotiate. They just need to know their tax map number and they can determine whether they have been added to the flood zone.
So now, so the big impact is, well, I mean, financially, is that you have to incur insurance, the cost of insurance, but I think also the value of a property may be impacted in that, you know, somebody coming from out of town, you know, and we say, well, gee, it only flooded once in 500 years, but now it's in the flood zone because the federal government may have overreacted. They're not going to buy that. They're going to say, well, I may not want to buy a home that's in the flood zone.
That's correct. It adds an element of insecurity, and it will impact upon the value because, again, there's an added expense that the buyer is going to have to incur.
That's true.
Now, I think from a marketing standpoint, you can still sell these properties, but the seller is going to have to be more realistic as a result of how these maps have been redrawn. It's unfortunate in certain cases because it's likely that some of these homes won't flood, but you've been saddled now with this burden, and it's important that potential sellers understand where they are.
And potential buyers need to understand as well, right?
That's correct. And buyers can get on that same website and do a little bit of their own research when they're looking at a house. And I'm sure the realtors that are working with you will help the buyers do that as well.
Well, Fred, thank you very much. It's, again, always informative having you on the show.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks.